What's up everybody? As promised, this is my follow-up video for the Obsbot Tiny 2, which was just released just a few days ago, and I've got a full review on the Obsbot Tiny 2. You can check that out to see more about this webcam if you want. And as I promised, I wanted to do a comparison test between the Obsbot Tiny 2 and the Insta360 Link, and you can see both of those videos on screen now. This video is unscripted and I really haven't put any real work into it, so if you're looking for slick edits or anything like that, bail out now. You're not going to like this video. This is just straight to the bone and cutting to the chase and comparing these two cameras and seeing which one is going to be the best camera for you. So these tests are going to be straightforward, to the point, and I'm going to just go category by category and assign a point to each webcam wherever it wins, and in the end we'll tally everything up. But keep in mind that a lot of this is just going to be my opinion, what I like in a webcam as far as like maybe image or colors or one kind of performance you may not like. So just keep that in mind. A lot of this is just going to be my opinion. So we're going to get straight into it now with build quality, and this is where the Insta360 Link wins. It is built just a little bit more rugged than the Obsbot, and it's got a little bit tougher plastic, and it actually has, the gimbal does like horizon leveling too, so it's got a third axis point for its gimbal head, whereas the Obsbot is just up, down, left, and right. The build quality of the Insta360 kind of reminds me a lot of the DJI Osmo Pocket, so if you've ever held one of those, you're kind of familiar with how that's built. Now, not to say that the build quality of the Obsbot is bad, it's just a little bit thinner plastic. Now, as for an honorable mention in build quality for the Obsbot, they did build it with an expansion port on the bottom for future expandability, so I'll be really excited to see what kind of things they do in the future with that. But both of them have a quarter 20 mounting screw in the bottom, and the Obsbot does have a magnetic base, but overall, pound for pound, I would say that the Insta360 Link is built just a little bit better than the Obsbot. But again, not to say that the Obsbot is built of poor quality, it's just the Insta360 pulls ahead just slightly. So for our second category, this is image quality, and this one's a little bit more tricky to judge. Clearly, I think in automatic mode, which we're in now, I think the Obsbot Tiny 2 looks a little bit better, but when you go into manual mode for both cameras, you've got some different controls that some have that the other doesn't have. So for example, now when we take control of the camera in manual mode, for example on the Obsbot Tiny here, when I go into manual mode, I can take control of the shutter speed, and I'm recording this in 30 frames per second, so our shutter speed should be 60, but I can go from 1/40 to 1/80, and unfortunately I can't go to the true 60 that we need. So that is kind of a disappointment on the side of the Obsbot in manual mode. Now we do have control over ISO for both of these cameras, so we can up our lighting level take advantage of the ISO control. So I think the picture definitely does get better in manual mode. And let me go back into automatic mode for just a second here. I can move my hand around and we don't get any kind of like lighting compensation when we're in manual mode, so that's a good thing. But let me go back into automatic and give you an example of that. So we're back in automatic mode now, and if you see, I'll move like my hand around and stuff. Look at the gray back here. You'll see that the Obsbot does some flickering in automatic mode. So that's something to keep aware of. Again, all of that goes away in manual mode, but it is something to be aware of. One of the advantages that the Insta360 has is when we go into image settings here and go turn off auto exposure, we can take control of the ISO again, but we can get our shutter speed at a true 60, which the Obsbot cannot do. We also have control over an exposure curve, and both cameras have control over brightness, contrast, saturation, things like that. If we look at both of these side by side let me go back into automatic mode for both of them. So as we look at both of these in automatic mode, the Insta360 seems to be a little bit more blown out. I've got hot spots here in my face, and it seems to be a little bit more contrasty. If you look at the background here too, we can see more detail in the buckles back here for this bag back here, but I mean, it's just like really minor as far as it goes. The Insta360 also seems to have a tighter field of view. Let's look at it back in full screen. Yeah, we can see that there's just a slightly tighter field of view with the Insta360 Link. We can see we've got more of this mic arm in the picture for the Obsbot Tiny, and little things like that. But overall, in automatic mode, I give the picture quality to the Obsbot Tiny 2. So in manual mode, it's a tougher call to make. The Tiny 2 does have a larger sensor, so it can take more advantage of different lighting scenarios and things like that. So I've introduced more light, and we can see that the image is getting better as I work around in manual mode. We can do things like take up or down the contrast and saturation and dial in the image as we want. I'm going to dial in the Insta360 in manual mode and get the picture looking as good as I can. So as far as it goes, I do like the colors better on the Insta360, but that's really kind of just a matter of changing the white balance on the Obsbot Tiny 2 and getting that a little bit closer. I do like the contrast and lighting a little bit better on the Obsbot Tiny 2, and I think the Obsbot Tiny 2 is just more detailed. It's got a bigger sensor, it takes better advantage of lighting and things like that. So to give you an idea with this in manual mode for both cameras, I've got the Insta360 at an ISO of 300 right now under the same lighting, whereas the Insta360 is at an ISO of 500. So I really don't like the contrast on the Insta360, but we can take that down, and we can, you know, take some of the hot spots like out of my face and stuff here. But yeah, it's, when it all comes down to it, I gotta give image quality point to the Obsbot, even though we don't get a true shutter speed like we should get. The Obsbot just has a better image, and it's got a bigger sensor, so it just makes sense. So yep, point to Obsbot. So I'm back into automatic mode for both cameras now, and that's how I'm going to be doing all of these tests unless otherwise specified. Automatic mode with both of the cameras set at their default settings. This next category is the audio category, and I'm going to be testing the microphones on each webcam to see which one sounds best. This is a microphone check of the Obsbot Tiny 2. Mic check 1, 2, 3. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm about arm's length away from the webcam. Mic check 1, 2, 3. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, this has been a microphone test of the Obsbot Tiny 2. And here is a microphone check of the Insta360 Link. Mic check 1, 2, 3. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm about arm's length away from the webcam. Mic check 1, 2, 3. Mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, this has been a microphone check of the Insta360 Link. As far as the audio goes, they both sound like webcam mics. They both sound very similar to me. They both sound bad because they are webcam mics. Point to neither. So those of you with a sharp eye and keen attention to detail may have noticed something different since the beginning of this video. That's right, I changed my shirt. In the time that I started working on this video, Obsbot's put out a firmware to fix their autofocus problems. And if you watch my full review on the Obsbot Tiny 2, you know just how bad the autofocus on this camera was. But originally in this category, the Obsbot lost the autofocus competition. Now, I'd say they're about even, but let's put it to the test anyway. And again, let me remind you that both of these cameras are in full automatic mode right now. So as far as that competition goes, I think they're both pretty even. Maybe the Obsbot is a little bit better, but they're close enough that I'm going to give a point to both. So our next category for both of these webcams is software, and I'm not going to show any examples in this video because I've done full deep dives into the software suites on both of these webcams, and you can check out those videos if you want, but I'm going to give this point to the Obsbot. The Obsbot just has more that it can do in its software. Now, that being said, there are things in the Obsbot software that I'm just never going to use. But as far as ease of use of the software, they're both even. The software for both of them are both very intuitive, but the Obsbot does more stuff, so point to Obsbot for software. Our next category is features, and this again goes to the Obsbot. The Obsbot not only has more features in its software, but you can get a remote to control it, and the Obsbot also has an expansion port on the bottom, which the Insta360 does not have. So point to Obsbot for features. Our next category is functionality, and this is things like tracking, zoom, things like that. And again, this is a point to the Obsbot. The Insta360 Link is not bad in its tracking, and its zoom and all of that stuff, it does it all really well, but as far as like the advanced zoom controls, the Obsbot is just a lot easier to control, and the Obsbot also has voice control functionality, whereas the Insta360 Link does not. Okay, so point for point, based on my arbitrary rating system, the Obsbot Tiny 2 won this competition. With that being said, the Obsbot Tiny 2 won in a lot of categories that I personally don't care about. It has extra features and functionality that I'm never going to use. With that also being said, the Obsbot Tiny 2 is about $30 more expensive than the Insta360 Link. I gave the Obsbot Tiny 2 a win in the image category, and it is sharper, but only slightly, and I do prefer the colors of the Insta360 Link in comparison to the Obsbot Tiny 2. I do kind of go back and forth on the image on both of these as far as which one I like better, but I'm going to stick to my guns here, and I'm going to say that I personally think the Obsbot Tiny 2 has just a slightly better image quality, even though I do prefer the colors of the Insta360. As far as which camera should you buy, the Obsbot's a little bit more expensive, and the Insta360 has a little bit less functionality, so it's kind of a tough call to make. Either of these cameras are going to be great for a small-time YouTube creator like myself. What I use these cameras for a lot are unboxings and overhead, like showing off products, and actually B-roll too. The way I do it is I put a camera nut through a clamp, one of these clamps that I get at Lowe's for just a couple of bucks, and then I've got a ball head on here, and then the camera mounted on that ball head, and I can clamp this around my desk somewhere or wherever I need it to be, and then adjust the camera, and then use the software to adjust the gimbal and hone in perfect on my shot. And that's how I record pretty much all of my unboxings and overhead video, and it works out great. Most importantly, it's a huge time saver. Story time here. I work a full-time job at 40 hours a week, and I work a second part-time job at anywhere from 25 to 30 more hours a week, so YouTube is kind of third on my list of priorities, and I only do it when I have time, and when I have time, I've got to maximize that time, and I've used the Insta360 link for about 10 months now to capture all of my B-roll and unboxings and things like that, and it's been invaluable in saving me some time. I'm going to go back and forth and use both of these cameras going forward for just that task, but I think story time's over, so that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.